Today on Dialogues in Design, we are talking to Maja Kovacic-Kalra, a former architect who now writes websites for architects who don't want to sound like every other practice. I'm so glad to have you here, Maya. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So, to start with, I'd like to go back a little. So, you have worked and trained as an architect. How did you move from architecture to writing?
Okay, that's it's quite a long story, so I try to make it really short. So I worked as an architect in Slovenia, where I'm from, for a few years, and then in 2006 I moved to London. Originally, my plan was to move for 1 year just to get different work experience. I'm still here because going to interviews to London, I met my future husband on a plane, but that's a different story. So eventually, I got a job in London, which was also quite hard because I'm from Europe and every practice here wanted UK experience, which I didn't have. But eventually, I got two offers. I moved to London. I started working here as an architect, which was fine. I was working, long hours as usually architects do. But then when we got pregnant and our daughter was born, you know, I stayed at home for a year on my maternity leave, and then after a year I went back. But I really struggled because my husband was working long hours, like he was coming home 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, and also I had to take her to nursery. I had to rush to work, finishing five, half five, then rushing back to pick her up from nursery. For her, long day, for me, long day. So I agreed to go back for 3 days. So, which was good because I started working again. From that side, all was good. But from the side that I was really exhausted because it was lots of rushing, that wasn't good. And also because I was working only 3 days, I couldn't be like a project leader on a project anymore, project architect, which I kind of felt I went backwards a little bit. But I proceeded. I continued working for 3 days until our second child was born, our son. Then again, maternity leave. I went back to work 3 days. And then eventually I tried to go back to work for 5 days, but half day. But in each case, either 3 days or 5 days, half days, I couldn't be as involved in the project as I used to be. So I was feeling I'm degrading, not progressing. So that felt a little bit like I'm not really happy. And also, on the other side, I felt, my kids spending these long hours in nurseries, I should be there for them because my husband couldn't be, and his salary was much better than mine. So there was not an option him leaving his job. So we made a decision. I'll stay at home. I raise them while they are small. So I stay, mom at home, which was great. But I still wanted to have a little bit of challenge. I wanted to do something. So I had no idea what I can do. And I found this social media marketing course for moms, which was okay. I can do this for home, which was perfect. It's for moms. So that talked to me, but I didn't have a clue about social media. I didn't have social media. I didn't know how it works, nothing. But I said, okay, I'll take the course. And that's how everything started. I took the course and it was explained, okay, I got some basics. I kind of know how everything works, but I didn't really feel it until I read this book, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, where he explained in such a simple words what marketing basically is. That this is how you should talk to your people who you want to work with in the language they understand, and you need to bring yourself in as their guide and take them from where they are now to where they want to be to make their lives better. And then suddenly what I learned in that course to what he was saying connected. And then I started doing social media for different businesses, not architects. And eventually, after a few years, I kind of missed architecture, and I was reading lots of posts architects were putting there, and I realized I think what I learned would benefit architects, and I can still help. I can still be part of that world and, do what I do now, what I know now, and still work with architects. So be part of that world, but, bring my world where I'm now into that. So that's basically how everything came together as a
Wow.
short story.
That's such an interesting journey throughout, from architecture to marketing and connecting both of these together. That
Yeah,
is really nice. That is not something everyone thinks of, because marketing as an architect is sometimes really difficult.
yeah.
Throughout your journey, what were some moments that you realized that communication is as important as design?
So my first thought about there's something wrong the way architects or in general people are marketing is when I read the story, when I read the book by Donald Miller, because that was the first moment I realized that how you should communicate, and it was, as I said, explained in a way that I very easily could understand. And then, reading, as I said, lots of posts and content from architects, even for me being an architect in my past life, sometimes I got really frustrated. I was thinking, just explain to me in simple words. I don't want to go online or read an article and really need to think about it, what you're trying to say. Just say it in simple words. I want to connect with what you're saying, but I really can't. And it got me a little bit like frustrated, because I know architects are really good when they communicate face to face with their clients, but when they start writing about it, something changed and they go back to their jargon and professional language. And then I realized, yeah, they are like two different, I wouldn't say personalities, but communicating with the client face to face in the meetings, most architects are going to put the client front and center. They're going to ask him questions. They're going to, talk about their problems. Then they're going to bring themselves in as their solution and how they can help them. But when they start writing about that, something changed. They start talking about themselves. They forget about the client. They're just about their practice, what they did, what awards they achieved, And then I realized, yeah, there is something that can be improved in the way architects communicate with people who are not architects.
Yes, I think that's something many architects struggle with, communicating with people who are not architects. That is so true, as you said, that we get in all the jargon and all the technical language. But why do you think that architects, especially early in our careers,
Um,
fail to, make that presence online, to communicate effectively online?
yeah, I think, like, going back when I was at uni, like everything we designed and everything we did, and when we had to, present that or to either professors or to our peers, everything was done in an architectural language. You are surrounded by architects, by architecture professors. So there's not at any point, and if that changed, I would really love to know about it. But at any point when I was studying architecture, none of the professors or anybody said to me, okay, you designed this project. Now think about, your next door neighbor on the street who is a, I don't know, let's say pharmacist. You need to sell this project to this person. So please talk about this project so this lady who is a pharmacist will understand, connect with, and she will see herself in this project. Nobody ever said that to me. All the projects that I designed were written or described or presented in a language, how the professors and other architects wanted it to hear. So I think if you have years of that, and nobody is talking about the other side, how, people who are not architects would need to hear that, then of course you are just so focused on that. And when you start, going into real world and you start, communicating, for example, online, of course you're going to carry that through, because first I never thought about that I should communicate in a different way, because, I was taught like that, I need to sound professional. I need to use jargon, because if I don't sound professional, people might think I'm not professional. If I don't use professional language, people might think, I'm not a good architect. Using simple language might devalue my work. So I think that's that miscommunication or misalignment when going from architectural world to a client world.
That is so true. And I think the contradiction here is that the client base are people who are not architects. So
Yeah.
connecting with them is very important, as you were saying. You review a lot of architecture websites. So, what do you think are some common mistakes that architects make on these websites that fail to or don't make that impact in connecting with the client base?
So there are a few things. I mean, the some of them, I would say, they don't have any words. So it's just like a website of images. I'll explain why I don't think that's enough. Another thing is there are words, but when you come on a website, you have this beautiful image or maybe a video, but nothing else. Again, there's no words. There's no telling me if I'm if this website is for me. I don't see myself in it. You're not telling me in one sentence how you can make my life better, or there's no call to action. What do you want me to do next? And then when you scroll down, it starts via an award-winning, I don't know, design-led practice that it's client focus. And you start explaining, and then it's usually a long paragraph of text. So there are a few things that I would say that they are not okay with it. Award-led, it's great you have awards, but there is a time and place where you should show this social proof. I don't believe you should lead with this, because when people come on the website, they are interested what you can do for me. What this architect can do for me. I'm not interested yet in your awards, but I want to see myself in that. And then if they read further, you can bring your awards in. Also, if you say design-led and client-focused, I think these are very essential for every architect, and clients expect that. You don't have to tell me that. I have this analogy, like if you would be on a plane and a pilot makes an announcement and it says, we are committed to land this plane safely. I would think, okay, why is he telling me that? I expect that, otherwise I wouldn't be on this plane. So I don't need to hear that. What I need to hear is what you can do for me. I want to see maybe my problems in your copy, what you're writing, or the benefits you're gonna bring me, or the solutions you're gonna bring to take me from where I'm now to where I'm gonna be. I don't want to read about the practice straight away. That comes later. So these, I think, main mistakes. Also, there's still jargon that architects use and professional language that it's hard to understand for non-architects. And mostly where they describe their projects on their portfolio, they are project descriptions. There's no story. I think that every client that reads about the project should see themselves in that project, even though that project wasn't designed for them. When they read about it, they should see, oh, I can live in that. I want something similar. But if there's lots of, again, professional language, jargon, and just plain description, that's hard to imagine. So more storytelling, less, jargon. That's, I think, our main mistakes that I see in general on architectural websites.
That is so insightful. The pilot example was such a nice way of telling how it matters. You were talking about visuals only websites. So many times in architecture schools we are taught that the design should speak for itself. How do you think that the websites can be more meaningful rather than just beautiful or aesthetic?
Yeah, I think beautiful images, are really important because people should see what you created and what you designed. But the thing is that lots of architects have beautiful images and great projects they design. So how can we distinguish then if you have like 3 websites, for example, if we're talking about websites, 3 beautiful designed websites that have amazing projects? You can do that with words. So I always think of a website. Imagine that's your house, you know. If somebody comes to your house, you're not just gonna open the door and say nothing. Or you're not gonna just open the door, see them on the sofa and start talking about, oh, we bought this new TV and it has, I don't know, HD and these features and it's that size. And oh, we have a new kettle. You're not gonna do that. You're gonna focus on them. You're gonna ask them questions. You know, you're gonna say, "How was your day?" You're gonna make them coffee. You're gonna cook them lunch. You're gonna be welcoming them, right? And I think your website should be very similar. So with the words that you say, you can welcome people. You can make them feel, you know, seen. You can talk about what you can do for them. And not talk just about yourself. Make them center and make you as the guide who's gonna provide solutions for them. So if you remove all the nice images from the website, your copy should tell a story. And also it should be easy to scan, because most of people, when they come to websites, about 70%, the researchers show, they only scan websites and don't read them word by word. So long paragraphs of text are not doing you any benefits. Make it, every section should have a headline. So even people just scan through and just read the headlines, it should already tell them, you know, what you can do for them, how you can make their lives better, what's your process. They need to get the basics from that. So yeah, I think a good website copy and great images, which most architects already have, it can make a really, really strong website.
That is such a nice perspective to treat clients like a guest. That is such a shift in perspective, and I'm sure that will help so many architects. And of course, about the balance you were talking about between the visuals and the text. You mentioned that the website should tell a story. So, how can storytelling be treated like as an important aspect of the website?
Um, I'm a big fan of storytelling. First, because again, you can take a very complex project and tell it in the words that a person who is not an architect can easily understand. And also, like going from very dry project descriptions, I believe every project has so many stories to tell. You know, there's so many people involved. There are great moments, there are bad moments, there are problems where you solve, you know, emotions, and usually all that happens during a project, it's forgotten and it's just told as the project description, what we did, what happened, what the features are, and that's it. But all those stories that happened while you were designing and working on a project are left somewhere there and never told. And I think that's so powerful to take that and tell a story where clients can see, you know, oh, this was the problem that architects were dealing with, and they, you know, they solved it and how they solved it. So these are, I think, very important aspects of storytelling, to take very complex language and tell it in a way that people can understand, because you can add emotional effects, and when people can have that emotional affection and connection to a story, that's going to build trust as well. I would much rather hear something that makes me emotional. I would like to hear more about that. I would start building trust and getting, you know, closer to, for example, this architect. So it, and also when you bring storytelling, that means you're going to put the client, you know, in the front and center. And that also means that then if you talk about a client who might be me, and if I see myself in that copy, I would much easier relate to this practice, and I will be curious how they can, you know, help me. And if I have like 2-3 websites where somebody is talking about me, of course I'm gonna go towards them instead of somebody who shows me just beautiful images, says nothing, or somebody who just talks about what they do. So I think that's the power of storytelling. Take something complex into simple language where people can connect to, can understand, and build that trust. better.
That makes so much sense. Storytelling is such an important aspect of architecture itself. I think a problem that a lot of architects face is that marketing or telling the story to someone else or probably put it on their website seems a little uncomfortable because we are so focused on telling the final image, final render, final project stats and everything. How do you think that this marketing can feel authentic or natural?
Mm. I think that's a very good question, especially now when it's so much AI, and everybody can put together a post or a content. So I would say if architects are sharing, like, let's say, I would say main posts that you can share are personal posts, educational posts, or motivational posts. So if you share a personal post, a personal story which relates to people, I would always say share it because people can relate to it, but always pivot it into something what you learn from it, and you can apply it maybe to business or to a project. So it's not just your personal story and becomes your personal diary, but you got something from that, and you can apply this what you learn from it to something, so other people can also learn from it. They don't just read your personal story, but they get what you experience, and maybe they can skip the whole thing what you had to go through, learn something from it, and apply it to maybe their business. So always pivot at the end of personal posts. Don't just finish your personal story and that's it. That's your authentic you comes in. When you share educational post, you can easily ask AI, write me a post about websites or about this and that and that, and you can copy paste it, but everybody can do that. So it's very important you bring your own authority into your educational posts, your opinions and your experiences, because that can't be copied from Google or AI, because it's something that comes from you. So for example, if I teach somebody, I think website should have 1 to 3 points, somebody can take that, say, okay, I learned from Maja 1 to 3 points, but now you can bring something yourself. You can say, but I don't agree with what she said in the point 3, for example, because and then you bring your own opinion, your own experience, and that's where your authenticity comes in. That's something that can only come from you, and it can't be copied from Google. So it's very important to share your views and your opinions, but make your, post or content scannable, easy to read again, so people don't have to burn all these calories, and they think when they see a big lump of text, oh, I can't be bothered to read that, because I'm sure there's so much value in there. Just make it easy for people to read.
That is so true. And the way you mentioned that portraying those opinions and that personal connect is so important. So, how important do you think is marketing for people starting out in their careers who are probably working under some other firm right now but having their own presence online?
I think if you're an architect working on your own, if you're an owner or you're working for another practice, I think you should have that visibility online, because you have an option to be visible online. I know it's extra work and sometimes it requires quite a lot, but I mean, in these times it's easy to be visible if you're active on social, and most young people are. So if you're working in somebody else's practice, so it's not your own practice, I would say always consult with your boss. Tell them, I'm thinking to go online, and then you have two options. You can either promote the company you're working with, share their projects, say, I want to promote you, I want to be, for example, on LinkedIn, I want to promote our project, our work. But as I said before, always bring something, what you learned, your opinions, your experience into it, that even if you leave that company, that content that you put there, but still yours. it's not just promoting your company, but it was something personal in that as well. Um, and also, if you ever want to change the company and you have that online presence, there's lots of recruiters that can recruit architects online on LinkedIn. You have another portfolio there, so it's another option to find new work, new job. People can see, your post, your thinking, the person you are, the way you express yourself. So, I mean, if you have time, I would definitely recommend doing it.
That is so helpful. As you were mentioning that in architecture schools, we fail to or probably don't talk much about this communication and marketing. What are some tips that you would like to give to young professionals who are starting out in their careers to make their presence felt online, to make themselves relevant?
I think it's mostly what I already said, but it's very, very important when you share your stuff online. Always, of course, be respectful. Don't go into, I would never support. It's good to have discussions, or, some people won't agree with you, some people will agree with you, but take this in a way that, it doesn't escalate. So that's the first thing. Have meaningful discussions. Which are really good. Always share your opinions, your experiences. Always bring your authority into your content. Doing it for your company or as a solopreneur or as your own, portfolio. And I would say just do it. And the thing is, you would see if you start now in a few years, in a year, 2 years, how you progressed, how much you learned. I always say if you don't start, you will procrastinate and, you won't learn as much as if you just start doing it. And just look at, people who are in your industry and learn from them. More you learn, like I said, you don't learn marketing, you don't learn business in architectural schools. So then now, like many architects complain, because their practice is not very successful, it's not doing well. But have they ever done anything to change the way they work? Because there's more and more people here that help architects. If we are talking about architects, there are ways to learn more things and how to do things better. You just need to go and do it. And that's not going to deflate your professionalism. That's going to only, make it better and make it different, because times are changing. Architects, as any other business, they need marketing, they need sales. Otherwise, you're not gonna, earn money.
That is so true. Just go do it is such helpful advice. It may seem small, but it is so very important to believe in that. And of course, marketing for architects is extremely important, especially today. Thank you so much for all of these insightful opinions and perspectives that you shared with us. To end with, can you recommend one small action or one small step young architects can take? Probably in short term, like probably if someone wants to start making their presence online this week, what are some things that we can do?
Well, first find the platform that, suits you and where people you want to talk to are. So for me, LinkedIn is my favorite platform. I used to do Instagram, I don't do it anymore, but some architects are using it. So it depends what your goal is. If your goal is just to, share your message and build your brand, maybe Instagram is better. I don't know. If you want to connect with professional business people, probably LinkedIn is better. So choose the platform that is best for you and where the people you want to connect and you want to talk to are on. And then, just think about what you want to share, how the content you're sharing can be helpful to others that you want to talk to. What's the value you're bringing? How communicate that value that people will very easily understand and can take some action on it. And if you use LinkedIn, please may optimize your LinkedIn profile first. Because your LinkedIn profile should work for you 24/7. I believe same goes with Instagram and other platforms, but for LinkedIn, I think it's the most important because it's a professional, business page, so make it professional and communicate. So, as I said, optimize your LinkedIn profile because that should work in your background. If anybody, sees your post, sees your comment, and they want to check you out, they're going to come to your profile. And there they need to find what you're all about and what you want to do them next. So make sure your banner is optimized, your headline is optimized, not just saying an architect. Tell them who you're architect for, and give them a call to action. What's the next call to action? There's a few more things, but make sure that that's strong and it's there when people come, so they can find out more about you and what you're about and what you want them to do next. Other than that, just try and enjoy and just start if you haven't started yet. And connect with people in your industry.
Yeah, I think connections are so important, and being out there is also so important, as you were saying. So, thank you so much, Maya, for all of these tips and all of the experiences that you shared. They were definitely very, very helpful for me, and I'm sure they are helpful for you listeners as well. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for giving us your time.
My pleasure. And I want to say, if anybody experience something different, for example, at a university, where some university maybe start, changing the way and start, talking about marketing business, please let me know. I would be so interested to hear that, because so far I haven't heard anybody would say that. But if anybody, thinks that is changing, please let me know.
That is so true. And I think the change is taking place like slowly. In my undergraduate, the college where I pursued, in first year, we had this course called communication design.
Okay.
And it was about this explaining your design effectively. So without the use of jargon, it was a very short course, but it was very impactful. And it did help me while I was making my portfolio later on.
Okay, that's really good to know. Okay, a small change. Good.
Yes, so let's hope that there are more changes like these
Yeah,
soon in the field of architecture.
yes. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. It was a real pleasure, and I hope this helps somebody. And if anybody has like more questions, you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can just connect with me or send me a message. I will be very happy to answer any questions.
That would be so helpful. Thank you so much, Maya.
My pleasure.